everybody. Hope you're having a fabulous day. How are you, my friends? Say hi. All right. So my name is Anna Abramowitz. If you haven't been here before, welcome. Welcome. If you're back, you're a sucker for punishment. I love it. Thanks for coming by. Listen, today is what I'm going to do is basically give you the highlight reel of a session that I ran yesterday for a learning summit that was put on by Sprout Labs. Now, if you weren't able to attend it for some reason, whatever, what this will do is give you kind of like the flavor of what we talked about, so you can either pursue to go there and check it out, or just look for more information about this amazing stuff, which is, you're in the right place, because that's what basically I talk about almost every single day. All right, so first off, what was really cool is the turnout was amazing, and one of the things that I seriously love, and I was talking about interactive episodes and scenario design, is how excited people get, how much we connected during those chats, and I applaud the people that showed up, because I had a lot of fun and I got a lot of great feedback. Also, not only on the content in the session, but just, you know, seeing people interact and connect with them on different media platforms afterwards is super fun. So my audience was actually mainly corporate, which is actually really cool, because as much as, I've lived in the academic world and worked in there and designed lots of online courses, but what was really cool is that I think the people that were there resonated with my message, because one of the things that I really want to debunk is the fact that we're borrowing archaic models from academia that apply to university students, and we're trying to take those same models and feel that they're going to be an excellent fit for designing learning for adults in the workplace, and it ain't gonna work. Also, the other thing that was, and I'll get into some finer detail in a little while, into another challenge, is this idea that we work with experts in a different fashion than we do in academia. The stakeholders are different, the experiences are different, and therefore also the other thing that we're doing is with this kind of, what we're building, an interactive episode, this is new. So we can't use old approaches to build new things, because we'll just end up with the same old stuff, right? What they say, if you want a new, the thinking that got us here is not the thinking that's going to get us to the next step, right? And that's what I'm trying to introduce. So some of these ideas probably were a little jarring for some people, and some questions really did come up that I'll probably address here a little bit better than I did yesterday, because let me tell you, it was a bit of an intense rush, okay? So it was like, I told people, if at the end of my session you felt like you were trying to drink water out of a fire hose, that's probably accurate. So I'm going to go through my basically highlight reel with some details for you. And if at any point you have questions about something, do put them in the comments, because either I'll point you to a video that I've made, because a couple of questions actually came up in the session yesterday, and I was like, oh, I have a perfect video for that. Or I'll make a new one if I haven't answered it. All right? Okay, who's with me? You with me? You excited? Okay, so we're going to be talking about interactive episodes. Now, what is an interactive episode? What is it? An interactive episode is basically, at its core, a bunch of decisions, which are scenario questions, right? Situation, make a decision, see the consequence, and they're all strung together with a story. So what is awesome is, in this medium, what we get to do is we get to be storytellers, which is really cool. But the other thing that happens, and you'll see this as well, is because we are getting into the world of episodes and stories, we also, as a default, have to borrow from places where this has already been the case, where it's already been used successfully. Where would that be? Movies, cinematography, animated flicks, right? Those people have already been doing this. They have systems and processes that we can borrow to incorporate stories effectively and create an interactive experience for the people we're designing for, which in most cases is adults who come in with a whole bunch of awesomeness in their minds already, and we're trying to weave and create a story that will engage them in a way that will help them make a transition, give them an aha, right? So that's basically what I'm going for here. Okay, so first off, where's my handy dandy eraser towel? If you ever come to my house and you get to use this particular face towel, you're going to end up with a black stain on your face because it is covered in markers. It's never going to wash off. So avoid the blue towel at my house. All right, so let's. I'm going to redraw this later, but I just want to show you like the big idea here. Okay, so guys, that's kind of important. All right, yeah. Okay. So, starting off, one of the things I want you to consider, and I'm not saying that, okay, when we apply things, traditionally, e-learning has been us taking fancy content from books and manuals and then putting it in a computer and just organizing it in a cool way and adding some interactivity, right? So far. So we've created, and we called that engagement, right? And the thing is, this is what I think is great. We've already digitized and made content available online. There's tons of it, right? It's really good stuff. Now, the problem is most organizations already have all that sweet content. Like it's already sitting there, right? And one of the things that's happened is that we think we need to like somehow make this more sexy and just make it more interactive. Well, the reason we think we need to make it more interactive is because we're trying to dress up content. If content's good and valuable, you don't need to dress it up. What you need to do is create a good gateway for people to recognize the content is valuable, if in fact it is, right? So this is where an interactive episode can come in. And this was a question from somebody yesterday where they were like, wait a minute, where would I actually fit a scenario? Where would it be used, right? Where would it be a good fit? And so what a scenario, an interactive episode would be, is it would be that moment that would give somebody the aha, like put them through a bunch of situations where they realized they needed extra skills to build, they needed extra information to know, they needed a different mindset, or that they perceived now they are capable of something they didn't think they were capable of before. And now all this content is ready for them to tap into because they now perceive the need. You don't need to reinvent this part. You just need to create a more sexier gateway for them to figure out that it's there and that they need it. That's usually what the big challenge is, right? So, and there's different ways to use scenarios. There's actually very many. That's why you have to be very strategic with how you design these things. And basically my session was mostly about how do you work with experts and practitioners to get the stuff you need, because this is new to everybody. And if you're coming in there with a, as we say, carte blanche, which is just anything goes, you are going to be, like I was, a project 6 months into the deadline, and 12 people, experts, thinking that they needed to give me feedback on every single button and still deciding what is the best approach. And I hated myself, they hated me, probably. They didn't tell me that, but I bet you they did, because there was so much iteration and so much review and so much inconsistency. So I thought to myself, I need to do this for myself, and that's why I'm sharing this with you, because I love what I do. I want to do a great job, and I want to work with people in a way that makes them feel like they've really contributed in the best way possible. And I found that when I make somebody who is an expert and I try to basically teach them instructional design and e-learning while they're working with me, I take them out of their zone of mastery and I expect them to learn mine when that's not really helpful. So how can I remove that obligation off of them and let them work in their domain, in their expertise, where they can add the most value. So they still love working with me because I'm only asking them questions that they're super confident about answering. And also that I love working with them because they're very clear about where our domain expertise lies. So when they have a question about something, they're going to ask me about it if it's related to e-learning and learning design, right? And all those things that are related to basically an interactive episode. So let me walk you through the kind of the system that I have now that I've been using for designing interactive episodes, and the system that my students have been applying, okay? Now, if you're enjoying this so far, I'd love a little wave or give me a 9 if you're finding this exciting. Yesterday I did a whole bunch of numbers like, give me a 9 if this has happened to you. And I had somebody just go crazy on the 9s. It was so fun. So what I did is I basically, for each one, I had a bunch of slides with situations, and I was like, has this ever happened to you with a subject matter expert? And then people would give me, I say, if this has happened, give me a 4. So I had all these 4s come up, then I had 5s, then I had 7s, so it was super fun. Seriously guys, I absolutely love webinars. I have another one coming up in a couple of months that you'll all get an invite to, but seriously love running them. And you know what's crazy, when you have 150 people in a room together and everybody has access to chat, I totally feed off of that energy. So it's super fun. All right, so when I begin a project that's an interactive episode, I've already done some serious work with talking to the business, talking about what they want to achieve, what their vision is, and at that point, when I've done that thinking, put my thinking cap on, and I've done the analysis, and I've concluded that a scenario is a good fit, I still have a ton of ideas about the real focus of that scenario, the real focus of those decisions that somebody's going to be making. What are we really trying to achieve? So I don't know if you were here yesterday, but yesterday I also did a live, and I introduced everybody to my reverse prism. So the reverse prism basically is where one of the things you really want to do with your interactive episode is to have a single theme, a single major theme running through it. And there's reasons you want to do that. So when you're first starting your project, you have tons of ideas. You'll have ideas because you're looking out in the world out there. You're curious. This is your passion. This is what you do, right? I geek out on this stuff. I check out demos just for the sake of being immersed in it, and I love that stuff. So whenever somebody puts out a new demo, I'm all over it. I'm reading things. So I come to every project with oh, maybe we could try that, right? So there's a whole bunch of ideas. Also, when I talk to the business, they have tons of ideas. They're like, this is what we want to accomplish, and this is what we want to accomplish. So you're like, okay, I'm trying to get the gist of why do we want to work it this way, or what do you already have in place that we can complement or make even 10 times better? What are you guys already doing awesomely that we could even take to the next level? Because a lot of times it's optimizing on things that already work instead of trying to solve problems. What can we optimize? That's a wicked project, right? So there's those ideas. Then you're talking to subject matter experts and they got their ideas, right? So what happens is you gotta be able to take all these ideas and kind of go, right? And take that rainbow and turn it into a single bright light that basically is your beacon, guides you. It's the vision, it's the essence, it's the theme. When you say, and I alluded yesterday to movies. I said, the best movies have a theme, and it's very clear what the theme is, because then the whole story kind of is very persuasive, right? So you have this one big idea, one big theme. And I don't want to be, condescending here, because that's not what this is about. But what we're doing with our learning, with our with the e-learning that we design, we're really trying to sell ideas, right? And the ideas can come in the form of, we're trying to sell you on a new way of doing things so you're more efficient. We're trying to sell you on a new 7-step process to engage your clients. We're trying to sell you on a new way to talk to your colleagues that'll make them want to come back to work because you're a better leader or you're a better collaborator, whatever that is. We're trying to sell ideas. We're trying to persuade people. And so you want to make sure that that message is super clear about what you're trying to persuade them on. Because if you're trying to sell them on more than one idea, it's not going to work. It's going to flop. Because the goal is that you're trying to like really drive that point home. And it's like if you had a movie like Jaws. What was Jaws about? Man versus nature. Right? Really, when you think about it. Some movies are romance or man versus himself or revenge or redemption, right? And all of these came up yesterday in our things, and it was rags to riches, right? There was lots of good, great ideas. So one of the things that I love about working with interactive episodes and scenarios and these storytelling is that it's something that we naturally love and we naturally seek out. And what's cool is that you can now bring it into your everyday work and feel like not only you're being creative, but also you're helping people at the same time. How cool is that? Are you getting this? We are in the most wonderful, wonderful profession ever. How cool. All right, so we've got this idea, one of the things I want you to also think about when I'm coming into a project, I don't have this super solid. This big idea emerges as I have conversations. So the other thing I come in with is a framework. And my framework looks a little like this. This is the simplest framework ever. But sometimes the best things are simple because they help you keep you grounded. When I say this is my framework for scenarios, that doesn't mean there is no deviation from this model, but it gives me a standing point to look out from and seek information from, and also gives everybody else clarity about what we're working towards. Because if this is a blank slate, when I say interactive episode, when I say e-learning, online learning, do you know the gamut of stuff that's out there, right? It's like, you could be, when I say e-learning, somebody could be like thinking that it's their experience they had with a flip book, which is basically a book that flips and has sounds when it flips. So that could be e-learning to them, or it could be all the way to like Second Life VR stuff, or anything in between, right? That's huge. So you're trying to set norms, and even this is mostly 100% for me as the designer and my team. It is not for the subject matter expert. These are the frameworks I come in with to guide my work, to guide my interviews, to guide my process. So this framework really is what I call the string of pearls. What I love about the string of pearls is that it is something that's a good baseline and can be built on to make it more complex when needed. But in the beginning, if you start with this, you're gold, right? So we've got the start, we've got the finish, and we've got the scenarios, which are, to me, these are the decision points. And that's basically, these are your pearls, right? These are your situations. This is an encapsulated situation with options on how to handle it and a consequence. And then that moves on to the next decision that I need to make, the next situation that I'm presented with. Now, so I've got all this kind of, it's this one definitely I'm kind of milling through it, right? Refining until then I'm able to integrate it into this process. Now, when you think about, back to my towel, when you think about the backwards prism, you are talking to people in for your scenarios, trying to discover ideas. These are supposed to be blob brains. So you're discovering what's going on in their daily lives, in their work, that makes it possible for them to be at the level they're at. Because one of the things that you're trying to do is gather enough juicy ideas and juicy decisions and juicy challenges that this group of people is facing to help you build a compelling story that somebody's going to find contextually relevant. They're going to be able to relate to, be like, that could be me. That could be me. And also that's going to give them realistic challenges. And the thing is, I gotta be honest, most subject matter experts, they're experts in the subject matter. So that means that they're able to quote, which page stuff's on, which section would you find that under? They know it inside and out, and those people are super valuable. However, when I'm trying to design an interactive episode, I need people who are living in the dream, who are living in the reality that I'm trying to take my learners to. That are like, when I say, okay, give me an example of it, they're like, well, last week what happened is I was trying to do this and this happened. So they're that tight with it. They're in it. So when I say I have a SME interview system, I'm really talking about a practitioner interview system. So what happens is I interview these people. When I interview these people, this ain't a chit chat. This isn't me going, so tell me about your day. How does your day go? And I used to do those interviews. And in fact, I got to tell you, when I did those interviews, even when I didn't have an agenda, when I was just like curious to learn what their day was like in the, in the life of a top performer, I would still get a ton of gold. So even if you don't have a strict interview system like I do, even if you just talk to your practitioner who's maybe a top performer or a recent top performer or a recent learner and say, okay, tell me, what your day's like and why you make certain decisions, you're going to get way more information than people who just talk to subject matter experts or refer to a manual, because you will get so much golden context. It's amazing. All right, so I'm talking to these fabulous humans, and only for 30 to 45 minutes. This doesn't need to be intense, which is wonderful, because the thing is, with practitioners and top performers, guess what they're usually doing? They're in the field top performing, right? So also the other thing is, remember I talked about how, you bring people on and then you feel like you have to teach them instructional design and you have to teach them about e-learning and then you have to show them how it's going to work. And these people are busy. I need 30 minutes. I'm lucky to get it. They don't care about how I do my job because that's not relevant to them. They're not going to go off and become their own interactive storytelling designers, right? They're going to go back to their job and be awesome because that's what the business expects them to do. I just get to tap into them for just a little bit. And when I do, I am laser focused. I am Napoleon Bonaparte. I am strategic. I am laser focused. I'm a Navy SEAL. I'm executing, and we are focused. We are talking about things that I need to fill my framework. So let's talk about those couple of those questions that I think you're going to find super helpful, and it'll also make sense in the terms of a framework, right, of my scenario framework. So I'm talking to these people. By the way, I'm recording a transcript, and because my questions are kind of consistent every single time, I can easily identify, this is that section where they're talking about this. So it doesn't go on and on. I have these specific markers that I go back to. A service that I use is Rev, rev.com. I use them. Now they have this new machine translation thing, which it's 10 cents a minute or something like that. Like, use it, okay? And also the other reason I suggest when you interview, you're only talking for 30 minutes, right? You don't want to be taking notes with somebody because they'll censor themselves so that they'll append their language so that you can write, and it sucks. Don't do that. Don't stifle them. You really want them to just go be like, talk, right? So it helps. And also the other thing, most of the times when we're talking to our experts and we're interviewing them for an interactive episode, they've never been asked questions like this. And so it'll take them some time to fill that, like think of an answer for you. If you're new at this, when I would see that they're uncomfortable or thinking, or I would be uncomfortable with the silence and add stuff or fill things instead of waiting for that silence and waiting for them to think. It kind of happens when you run your first webinar and you ask people a question and in the chat, you ask them to answer in the chat and people are busily typing, but you can't see it, right? So you get all antsy. You're like, if you're new. But now I'm like, good, just sitting there for like a whole minute, just like waiting for it to come in. It'll come in. So one of the reasons why I always suggest anybody who just is starting to interview subject matter experts is because not just for what they said, but for what you said. So you actually have now a transcript of how many times you maybe filled in the void or interrupted them when you should have just been quiet and waited and listened. So it's a good learning tool for you. And that's where I got good. I started reading the transcripts and seeing how much I interjected when it was unnecessary. So that's my tip for you. If you take nothing away from this, record your calls with your subject matter expert. It releases so much more opportunity for them to share. And also it teaches you about how you interview. And if you need to make some adjustments, you might already be awesome. That's great, but you don't know yet. All right. So I'm interviewing these people, I have their transcripts, and then I turn these transcripts into a beat sheet. What is a beat sheet? So a beat sheet has nothing to do with root vegetables. Da-dum-dum. I actually had a beat on my slide yesterday, and the worst thing is I think it's one of those jokes that only people who are like, if you can see their face, but I couldn't see anybody's face but my own, so I thought it was hilarious. Anyways, all right, so what is a beat sheet? A beat sheet, that's what comes out of all these transcripts. The transcripts are, they're peppered with little pieces of gold, little situations. Not all of them, not everybody's good at sharing emotions, because that's what I'm looking for. Decisions that are emotionally charged. Usually if a decision is emotionally charged for somebody, like why can't you just make that decision? Is because either A, the procedures suck and they're ambiguous, or two, they're not confident about making that decision. There's something attached to it, right? Or there's an assumption attached to it. Like, if I do this, this will happen. So you want to catch those because that means those are mistakes people are making in the field. Like they've got some assumptions that need to be undone because they're not making the right decision because of a belief. Let's address that. That's juicy. That is going to get us some wins. That's the kind of stuff I'm looking for. So when I find that, then I organize it into like basically one-line bullet points. And I kind of make this, the beat sheet is kind of like a day in the life kind of thing. When you come home after a long day and your fabulous partner goes, honey, how was your day? And you're like, well, let me tell you. Hopefully you don't go into the super detail because they'll probably never ask you again. I just got to give you that advice. But you want to go, you probably go through the highlights. Just like, I saw somebody at lunch and then we had this amazing thing, but then I was late. And then because of that, this happened. And then because of that, this happened. Now, this whole idea of cause and effect is actually super awesome because what happens is if I give you a play-by-play and one thing leads to another and there's a cause and effect, that is golden for us to create a scenario where people feel they have agency because every decision leads to another kind of outcome or event or another decision to make, which is wonderful, which is absolutely wonderful because people love to feel like they're in charge of that story. It gives them stake in it. It's wonderful. So then I put together this beat sheet, and then from that beat sheet, then I move into an interactive outline, which basically is a combination. I'm just going to write it down here instead of just only you. It's a combination of two things. The next interactive let's call that. It has a mix of script, So what's going to happen? What's going to be said? What are the decisions? And then interactivity. Squeaky. Interactivity, because it's kind of cool. We're like creating a movie where people get to choose their own adventure. And by the way, that's amazing. But I just saw a demo from one of my students, and she went from the thinking brain stage all the way to the build. And I don't think there's any industry in the world where a single person can go from idea to build. Like, imagine it. Like, everybody else needs like a crew. You have the power. You have the power, baby. This is amazing. All right. So we've got this interactive script. And one of the things I wanted to tell you just right now, because this is focused on that subject matter expert interaction, is just quickly the 3 questions that I would suggest you check out when you're designing your interactive episodes. And I'll finish with that. So 3 questions. And the reason we're asking these questions is because we're trying to satisfy the requirements of our magical framework, right? That's why you have to start with this, having this in mind, because if you don't, you get lost and you'll let things in that distract you and take you down a path that dilutes your message. Like I said, you need to have a strong theme. And the other thing is, when I had the drawing of all those people and all those transcripts, what happens when people start sharing their stories, you'll start to see a theme emerge. And sometimes the theme is not what the business thought, it's not what you thought, it's not what the SMEs thought, it's what the reality is on the ground. And it might not be explicitly said, but because you now have this big picture perspective, you can really check out what that is. So sometimes it's not about procedures or executing things, it's about having daily confidence. Sometimes it's about recognizing that leadership is, you have opportunities to be a leader in every single situation. So those are some themes, right? Also, decisions are hard, and in this role, they need to be made even if you don't have the full comfort of having all the info. And then what happens, what's beautiful, is then you can say, oh, here's an idea, here's a decision, here's a situation. Does it fit my theme? Does it support my theme? Does the feedback I give support that theme? Am I driving this message home? So everything gets put through your reverse prism to see if it makes sense and if it supports it. And if you have 2 major themes, you might have to have 2 interactive episodes just to make sure each one is as powerful as it should be, right? Okay, so here's the 3 questions. You gotta remember, okay, what are or is your biggest obstacle? And you're thinking, what do you mean? Okay, if I'm talking to a subject matter expert, this probably won't fly as a question, because they're like, there is no obstacles, I'm an expert. If you're talking to a practitioner in the field, I'm saying, okay, you're the top salesperson. What's the biggest obstacle every single day that you face? And they might be like, you know what? It's not the customer interaction. It's actually getting in front of them. That's my biggest obstacle, is getting in front of the decision maker. So you gotta get that. You gotta find, or what's your biggest obstacle, salesperson? You know what? I can tell them everything about the product, and the minute I go to pitch, I freeze. Oh, that's my biggest obstacle, is just getting over that hang up. What is that? What's the biggest obstacle? Because guess what I'm doing when I figure out what the biggest obstacle is? I'm going to start feeding it in to my decisions. And for some people, the obstacles might be different, but they're all trying to be over here. They're trying to be the champ. They're trying to be the best. And what happens is you basically are trying to figure out what is that journey that's going to help them get here. believe something else, be something better, perceive that they can. They start off, they believe they can't. They're like, I'm not as good as Jim. Jim's got years of experience. Jim's got this gift of the gab. Jim's good with people. I'm never going to be the number one salesperson because I'm not like Jim. You know, they believe that. Adults come in with all kinds of BS into your training. So your scenario can be there to help you undo some of that belief so that you can then be like, are you now ready? Are you ready to be the top salesperson? Because you can, right? Because you went through all these challenges. Look, you proved to yourself you can. You can make the right decisions. All right, now check out the manual and on how to close. You just focus on those closes, baby, and you'll do it, right? Awesome. So this is one of the questions that I ask. There's quite a few, but you got to be deliberate. So here's number 2. What's my number 2 question? Okay. Oh, this is a good one. I love this one. How did you know you were successful? Now, this is huge. The reason I ask this question is because you're trying to craft a story. And a story is only as good as the picture at the end, right? Like, what am I working towards? What's going to be awesome? And the thing is, I, as an outsider, could say, maybe the reason somebody wants to be as good as Jim is because they want that bonus at the end of the year. They're like driven by the money. But, and that's good. That's like an external, extrinsic motivator that should be a part of my story because sure, it's a part of that bonus. But then there's the under part. And for some people, success is not about that. Success is about going home on time and not feeling like the next day's gonna suck because they're so anxious because they didn't get their work done, or they're anxious to meet their boss. They want to have a good meeting where they're like, their boss says, you know what, you're doing good. You're not the lowest, you're not the last guy on the list, you know? They want to be the fifth guy from the bottom. That would make them feel better. What does success look like to this person? And a lot of times what you're digging for is that intrinsic stuff. Like, for some people, it's really about either peace of mind, being able to spend more time with their family, feeling like they're doing their best, like the efforts match the result. Those are huge things. It may not always be the extrinsic thing. That's almost a bonus. So you want to capture both because both will make a good story, right? And then number 3. Number 3 is, what made you decide to take on the challenge? Okay, this one gives me shivers. I'm so excited about this question. Okay, so okay, you know how if you're like into comic books or into basically any kind of hero story, right? And by the way, in case you didn't catch that, we're making a hero story here. We're going from like the everyday life to, you know, Luke as a farm boy living with his aunt and uncle in the desert, being a total like boring life, right? Doesn't know it's boring. He's just okay. To one day getting a medal from a princess and saving the universe as they know it. That's what we're crafting here, except without any silly themes like pirates or leprechauns. We're creating contextual, powerful stories where your character is imagining themselves as a hero in a story that's at work. How cool is that? Sexy, right? So what made you decide to take on the challenge? Well, every hero needs a backstory. It's the backstory that makes them interesting, right? If they didn't have a backstory, if all of a sudden they showed up and they're like, imagine Superman with no Krypton. Imagine Superman with no loss of his parents. We would not care about Superman. We'd be like, okay, here's a guy who's super powerful, doesn't have any flaws. So what? But here we have his family died. He was abandoned. He's all alone. Nobody from his planet survived. And he was shot off into the... Right? Like, So here, it's got to be that not only the backstory, because you're crafting that, people aren't going to be like, by the way, well, they might, but you don't need that, because you just have a finite amount of time, so you're going to craft something real punchy but powerful at the same time. But you need to know what the breaking point is for this person to take the challenge on to be the best. Like when somebody, and I've met people like this, you probably have as well, something will happen in their lives where they will have had enough. Like one of the best stories I ever heard about this was a story that Jim Rohn said in one of his seminars. He said that he met this really successful executive woman, and he was like in the business world, right? And she's younger than most women, super successful family, and he's like, how did you get here? What was it? And she goes, well, I was a single mom, I was a young mom, and one day I asked my husband for $10 because she wanted to buy some sort of dishcloths or something, I don't know. And he said, what for? And she said, that was the last time, that was the straw where she was asking her own husband for $10. And she said, that's the moment where she decided enough is enough. She went to school, she took night classes, and she never ever asked again, right? So you're like, oh, now you meet that lady, and it's a completely different person. You now have this 3-dimensional reason in it, and it makes it so powerful because you know where she came from, and then you can say to yourself, that could be me. She did it, I can do it. And that's what you're looking for in your character. It's not that they have to see themselves and be like, it has to be, if a woman who is in her 40s, who is from Poland. No, it has to be somebody who has a reason to do something and it's compelling enough. For somebody, it might be that they wanted to take their kid to Disney World, and the little child comes home and she says, Daddy, Susie's going to Disney World. When are we gonna go? And Dad's like, I can't take my kids to Disney World. You know what? That's the moment I decided I'm going to step it up and I'm going to become the top salesperson because I know the bonus win is Disney World trip for the whole family. That's the moment when I had to tell my kids we can't afford it. Boom. Jim wants to be the next best salesperson. What are his hang-ups? He can't close. He has a tough time getting in front of the right people. Boom, 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 boom. Jim, at the end, all he cares about is taking his little daughter to Disney World. Jim's ready. Jim's, or whoever. Wait, Jim was the guy. So, helpful? Questions? Ahas? Conundrums? Post your questions in the comments. I'd love to hear them. If you found this helpful, useful, check out the presentation I ran. It's this, but a lot more. Also, I spoke much faster because I had a limited amount of time. But also, if you want to get more info about this and get good at this, attend these lives. Also, if you think this is something that somebody would benefit from, share it with them. Sharing is caring. Also, when you like this video, what it does is it kind of says, hey, this is good stuff, this is good content. It kind of bumps me up in the line and spreads the word. So I appreciate that, you spreading the word on my behalf. Like I said, post your comments, any questions, put them underneath the video, wherever you're watching this. If you've stuck with me for this long, you are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. That means you're pretty engaged and excited about it, so you better have a question, right? Or you might. So let me know, and I will talk to you next time. Have a wonderful rest of the day, my friends. Take care. Bye.